Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Dark History Podcast, where we explore the darkest parts of human history. Hope everybody is well. I'm Rob, your host as always. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 23, Spirits of the Past, exploring America's most haunted places. Tonight, we're taking a deep dive into the dark, haunted corners of America. Places where the past is more than just history. It's present. These are the locations where the echoes of what once happened haven't quite faded. Places with blood-stained histories, unsolved mysteries, and lingering spirits that seem to defy the passage of time. From haunted hotels where the guests check in but never leave, to the battleground where the fallen still march at night. These sites all tell stories not just of history, but of something beyond. They are steeped in tragedy, loss, and the unknown. Places where the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. Whether you're listening from the comfort of your home, walking alone a quiet street, or driving down a dark road, tonight we're going to take you on a journey into America's most haunted places. But be warned, some of these stories are not quite for the faint-hearted. History may have written its pages, but the spirits of the past seem determined to rewrite their own. So, grab a blanket, dim the lights, sit by the fire, and let's begin our eerie adventure together as I bring you more dark history. We'll begin our journey in the heart of the Ozark Mountains, at a place that stands not only as a monument to history, but something much darker. Welcome to the Crescent Hotel, located in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Built in 1866, the Crescent started as a lavish resort for the wealthy, offering its guests the serenity of the mountains and the finest luxury that the 19th century could offer. But like many grand dreams, this one soured, and what it became over the years is something far more sinister. The Crescent Hotel's history is a slow descent from opulence to horror, as the very foundations of the building were cursed. By the 1930s, the once grand resort transformed into the stage for one of the most grotesque medical frauds in American history. Enter Norman Baker, a man whose name still conjures up disgust. Baker wasn't a doctor. In fact, he had no medical training whatsoever. He was a conman, a radio host, and a snake oil salesman. But his true legacy lies in the suffering he inflicted upon the desperate people seeking a cure for cancer. Baker wasn't just a charlatan. He was a predator. He preyed on the hopeless, promising them a cure to their illness with a concoction that was nothing more than a toxic mixture of carbolic acid, corn silk, and watermelon seeds. His so-called hospital within the Crescent Hotel became a place where hope was twisted into despair. People came to be healed, but they never left, alive, at least. It wasn't just death they found, it was suffering. Imagine the horror of these patients, men and women whose bodies were already ravaged by cancer, subjected to painful, useless treatment, all while being assured they would recover. Some of them spent their last days in agony, their hope shattered. Baker's hospital didn't heal anyone. It was more like a death factory. And when patients finally succumbed, Baker had them quietly transported to the basement, which he had turned into a makeshift morgue. Think about that. Beneath the luxury, beneath the ornate staircase and the grand ballroom, there was a place of death. bodies were stacked in that basement, stored in cold rooms and prepared for burial. But some say not all the bodies left. It's as if the basement itself absorbed their despair, the final cries of the people who had their hopes ripped from them. The Crescent Hotel became a tomb in its own right. It's no wonder that many believe the spirits of those patients never left. And the hauntings, they began soon after Baker's operation ended. Guests, staff, and visitors have reported seeing apparitions wandering the hallways, often appearing as shadowy, gaunt figures, lost in their own misery. It's believed these are the spirits of the patients who died under Baker's care. They still roam the halls, perhaps searching for the cure they were never promised, or maybe seeking justice for the deception that stole their lives. The most infamous room in the hotel is room 218. It has a particularly chilling history. During the hotel's original construction, a young Irish stonemason named Michael fell to his death while working on the roof. His body crashing through the ceiling into what is now room 218. And that's where the strangeness begins. Guests who stay in that room often report bizarre, unsettling occurrences. The doors slam on their own, lights flicker, and the furniture moves as if some unseen force is playing tricks on them. And then there's Michael himself. People who stayed in room 218 often speak of waking up in the dead of night to see his shadowy figure standing near the window, staring out at the Ozark Mountains. Sometimes guests feel a cold hand brush against their face, as if Michael is still there, lingering in the rooms that became his grave. But Michael isn't the only spirit at the Crescent. The energy in the hotel is thick, especially in the basement, the old morgue where Baker kept the bodies. It's been decades since it was used for that purpose, but the coldness that lingers there is unnatural. Many visitors have described the suffocating sense of dread when they step into that part of the hotel, as if the walls themselves are watching, remembering what happened there. Paranormal investigators often experience technical malfunctions. Cameras die, batteries drain, and strange, electronic distortions are recorded. It's almost as if something wants to keep the secrets of the basement hidden. One of the most unsettling spirits is Theodora, a former patient. Her ghost is often seen in room 419, tidying her belongings as if she's still preparing for her stay. But there's something deeply sad about her presence. Some have described her as lost, forever trapped in a loop, waiting for a cure that never came. Guests have reported seeing her materialize in the hallway, only to vanish a moment later, as if she's caught between the worlds. It's almost as if the spirits at the Crescent are tethered to their final moments. These aren't just ghosts, they're echoes of people whose lives were stolen from them, bound to the trauma they experienced within those walls. But it's not just Baker's victims who haunt the hotel. There have been reports of Baker himself wandering the halls. It's as if the man who caused all this suffering is condemned to walk the corridors of his own creation, forever haunted by the consequences of his actions. There's a chilling story of a guest who woke up in the middle of the night to see an old man standing at the foot of her bed, dressed in an old-fashioned white suit. The same type of suit that Norman Baker used to wear. He didn't say anything, he just stood there, watching. When the guest blinked, he was gone. It's as if Baker's spirit is still overseeing his twisted operation, refusing to leave the very place where he ruined so many lives. And the hauntings don't stop at the rooms, or the basement. Even the ground of the hotel seems to pulse with energy. The gardens, once a place of beauty, have a strange stillness about them, as if the spirits of the dead are watching from the shadows. The energy of the Crescent Hotel is oppressive, like the hotel itself is alive, feeding off the sorrow and fear that fills its halls. The Crescent Hotel isn't just a building, it's a wound, a place where history, tragedy, and deception have created an atmosphere so thick with darkness that it seeps into everyone who steps through the doors. Visitors today come to seek luxury and relaxation, but many leave with stories of something else, something far more disturbing. Some have claimed that the Crescent leaves an imprint on you, as if the spirits have reached out and left their mark as a reminder of the place that you could never truly escape. And that is the real terror, isn't it? The idea that the hotel itself is more than just haunted, that it's cursed, forever stained by the evil that took place within its walls. A place where the past refused to stay buried, and the dead refused to rest. The Crescent Hotel might offer a beautiful view of the Ozark Mountains, but beneath its charm, there is something darker, something that's waiting. We're gonna take a little break here, as the ghosts and goblins return to their hiding places. Don't let your Halloween costumes and decorations disappear into clutter. With Smart Label's QR code stickers available on Amazon, organising your spooky gear and everything else has never been easier. Whether you're packing away Halloween costumes, winter clothes or holiday decorations, Smart Labels helps you keep track of it all. Simply scan the label with the Smart Label app, add a name, description and snap a picture of what's inside each box. Now, when the time comes to summon your items next year, you won't have to search through endless bins. From forgotten costumes to misplaced props and beyond, it's perfect for organising closets, garages and the mysterious corners of your home where things tend to vanish. Even when you've tossed out old or broken items, catalogue them too, so you always know where they lay to rest. With Smart Labels, it's like having a little Halloween magic to keep your things organised all year round. Just scan, catalogue and store. Smart Labels QR code stickers available on Amazon, taking the scare out of storage one label at a time. Welcome back. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, is a place where the echoes of one of the bloodiest battles in American history still resonate through time. Over 3 days in July of 1863, this quiet town became the stage for a battle that changed the course of the Civil War. More than 50,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or went missing during the Battle of Gettysburg, and the land was left soaked in blood, forever marked by unimaginable horrors of war. It's hard to imagine the sheer carnage that took place on those fields. Over 160,000 men clashed, with artillery booming, bullets tearing through flesh, and soldiers dying where they stood. The emotional intensity of that moment, the fear, the pain, the desperation, seems to have imprinted itself on Gettysburg. And where such intense suffering occurs, it's no surprise that the spirits of the dead still linger. Gettysburg is considered one of the most haunted locations in America, and for good reason. The land, the buildings, even the trees seem to hold on to the energy of those 3 horrific days. There are stories of ghosts everywhere, soldiers who never left the battlefield, wandering in eternal torment, searching for their comrades, or reliving the moments of their death. Let's start with one of the most famous places in Gettysburg, Devil's Den. Devil's Den is a rugged outcropping of rocks where some of the most brutal fighting took place. During the battle, it became a strategic point, with Union and Confederate soldiers clashing in close combat, fighting tooth and nail to control the area. The chaos that ensued there was unimaginable. The rocky terrain became a graveyard as the soldiers fell, their bodies trapped among the stones. To this day, visitors report seeing apparitions of soldiers still wandering the area as they're stuck in the moment of their final battle. One of the most famous ghost sightings at Devil's Den is the spirit of a Confederate soldier, described as a man with a large floppy hat, barefoot and ragged. He's been seen by numerous people over the years. He often appears to tourists as they explore the site, only to vanish before their eyes. Some say they feel an eerie, almost overwhelming sense of being watched while standing amongst the rocks, as if the soldiers who died there are still looking on, guarding the land they fought for. It's not just Devil's Den though. Across Gettysburg, the dead seem to have left their mark. Take Little Round Top for example. It was here Union forces, under Colonel Joshua Chamberlain, famously held their ground in a desperate bayonet charge against the Confederates. The fight for the Little Round Top was fierce and bloody, with bodies piling up in the chaos. Many believe that the spirits of the soldiers who fought and died on that hill still haunt it to this day. Visitors to Little Round Top have reported seeing shadowy figures standing on the hill, dressed in Civil War uniforms, looking out over the battlefield as if they're still on guard. Others have heard disembodied voices, whispers that seem to drift through the air, or the distant sound of cannon fire and musket shots, as if the battle itself is still playing out on some spectral loop. It's as if the time doesn't quite function the same way at Gettysburg. The past and the present seem to overlap. And then there's the Gettysburg Orphanage, another location with a tragic and haunted history. It was originally established in 1866 to care for the children who had been orphaned by the Civil War. But over time, the orphanage's purpose darkened under the cruel rule of its headmistress, Rosa Carmichael. She was notorious for mistreating the children, locking them in a dark basement and subjecting them to brutal punishment. The basement itself became a dungeon of despair, and the scars left on those poor children seemed to have created something far more disturbing. The basement of the orphanage is one of the most active paranormal hotspots in Gettysburg. Visitors often feel an overwhelming sense of sadness and fear when they enter. Some have heard the cries of children echoing through the dark, and others have seen shadowy figures darting across the room, as if trying to escape some unseen terror. There are even reports of people being physically touched, scratches appearing on their skin, or chilling hands gripping their arms. It's as if the suffering of those children never left that place. The basement still holds on to their pain, and the spirits trapped there are trying to tell their story. Perhaps the most famous haunted building in Gettysburg is the Farnworth House Inn. During the battle, it was used as a makeshift hospital for Confederate sharpshooters, and the attic served as a sniper nest. The building saw a lot of death, and the spirits who died there don't seem to have moved on. Guests at the Farnworth House have reported all sorts of paranormal activity. Doors that open and close on their own, lights flickering, and the sounds of heavy boots pacing the hallway. One of the most famous spirits said to haunt the inn is that of a little boy named Jeremy. He is believed to be the ghost of a child who died in a tragic accident, and many guests have seen his playful spirit wandering the halls, sometimes tugging at their clothes or moving small objects. But it's not just Jeremy. There are other, more sinister spirits as well. People have seen the ghost of a Confederate soldier standing in the doorway, his eyes filled with anger, as if he is still defending the house from an unseen enemy. The spirit of a woman, believed to be a nurse who tended to the wounded soldiers, has also been spotted, moving silently through the rooms as if she's still caring for the dead and dying. The sheer number of ghost stories in Gettysburg is overwhelming. It's as if the entire town is haunted, not just by individual spirits, but by the battle itself. Even on quiet days, visitors have reported hearing distant rumbles of cannon fire, the sound of marching feet, and even the faint cries of soldiers crying out for help. It seems like the town is locked in time, forever, playing the horrors of those 3 days in 1863. Our next stop takes us deep into the heart of Texas, to a hotel that stands in the shadows of one of the most famous battle sites in American history. Welcome to the Emily Morgan Hotel in San Antonio. It's a striking, Gothic revival building that stands right next to the Alamo, a place forever etched in the bloody history of Texas. But the Emily Morgan isn't just another historic building. Some say it's one of the most haunted hotels in the United States. And it's not just the proximity to the Alamo that makes the Emily Morgan so chilling. The building itself has a dark and eerie history. Originally constructed in 1924, it wasn't always a hotel. It started out as a medical facility, a hospital, and get this, a morgue. The tower, that now houses guests, once held operating rooms, psychiatric wards, and yes, the bodies of the dead, awaiting burial. The energy left behind from its time as a hospital seems to have seeped into the very bones of the building. Think about it. A place where life and death were constantly intermingling, where pain, suffering, and despair were everyday occurrences. It's no wonder that some of the spirits who died have never left. The Emily Morgan Hotel is a place where the line between the living and the dead is razor thin, and guests have been reporting ghostly encounters for decades. From strange apparitions to cold touches in the night, the hotel has a reputation for the unexplained. One of the most famous ghost stories involves the elevator. Visitors report that the elevators at the Emily Morgan often behave strangely. They seem to have a mind of their own. People step in, press a button, and find themselves whisked away to a random floor. Usually the 7th or the 9th, which were once part of the hospital's psychiatric ward and morgue, respectively. Imagine stepping into the elevator late at night, thinking you're heading to your room, only to find yourself on one of these haunted floors. It doesn't stop there. Guests who end up on the 9th floor often describe a heavy, oppressive feeling as soon as they step onto the elevator. Some say they'd heard the faint sounds of hospital gurneys being wheeled down the hallway, the clinking of metal, as if an old operating room is still in use. Others have seen shadowy figures in hospital gowns wandering aimlessly, as if they're still trapped in their final moment. It's the 9th floor that seems to hold the darkest energy. Remember, this was the morgue, the last stop for those who didn't survive the hospital's care. Some guests have even reported waking up in the middle of the night to find their rooms ice cold, with an unshakable sense that someone, or something, is watching them. There are reports of doors opening and closing on their own, lights flickering, and even the feeling of invisible hands brushing against their skin. Let's not forget the apparitions. People have reported seeing a spectral woman wandering the halls, believed to be a former patient who died during surgery. She appears as a pale figure, dressed in an old-fashioned hospital gown, her face emotionless, and her presence is always accompanied by a chilling drop in temperature. Some guests claim they have seen her standing at the foot of their bed in the dead of the night, only to watch her slowly fade away into the darkness. That's the thing about the Emily Morgan. It's not just about the building's past as a hospital. Its location, right next to the Alamo, adds another layer of haunting energy. The Battle of the Alamo, fought in 1836, was one of the bloodiest and most tragic events in Texas history. Over 200 men were killed in that battle, and the grounds beneath the Emily Morgan Hotel is believed to have been a part of the burial site for many of those fallen soldiers. The entire area is steeped in death and sorrow. The spirits of those soldiers are said to roam the area even today. Guests and staff report seeing the ghostly figures of soldiers in old military uniforms walking the streets outside of the hotel or standing near the wall of the Alamo. Some say you can still hear the faint sounds of gunfire or the cries of men fighting for their lives, as if the battle itself is still playing out in the afterlife. Being so close to the Alamo, the Emily Morgan Hotel seems to act like a magnet, drawing these restless spirits. No matter how much time passes, the Emily Morgan Hotel seems to hold on to its history. The building is like a sponge, soaked in the energy of what it used to be, a place of healing, but also a place of death and suffering. It's a hotel that wears its history like a shroud, and the ghosts that linger within the walls are a constant reminder of the pain and tragedy that occurred there. Once you step through the doors, you're never quite sure which world you'll be in. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this long and dark episode. And there you have it, another chilling journey through the haunted landscapes of America. We've wandered through the halls where the restless dead roam, and stood on battlefields where the cries of the fallen still echo in the night. These places are more than just haunted. They're windows into the past, places where history refuses to stay buried. The ghosts we've talked about tonight are more than just shadows in the dark. They're reminders of people who lived, fought, and sometimes died tragically in these very spots. It's almost as if their stories were too powerful, too painful, to simply fade away with time. Instead, they linger, waiting for someone to listen. Next week is our Halloween special. This will be out on Halloween, so don't worry if there isn't an episode next Wednesday. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a review. It really helps us reach more listeners by boosting our visibility in the algorithm. If you think friends and family might enjoy the podcast, don't hesitate to share it with them. You'll find links to all our socials below. I know ads can be sometimes a pain, so if you'd prefer ad-free episodes, check out the Patreon link, also provided. Supporting us on Patreon is a great way to contribute, but it's entirely optional. We also have a merch store, that's also linked below, where any purchases greatly support the show and help cover production costs. If you've been listening for a while and haven't subscribed yet, please do so. That way, you never miss an episode. Thank you again for the support. So with all that out of the way, thank you again for listening. Join us next time for our next episode as we delve into another event and more dark history.